So we still have another minute here before we expect Dr. Williams to log in. So if you are watching on YouTube right now, this is the 2015-2016 Connect series hosted by the American Education Research Association, AERA, Division A Graduate Student Committee. This is a series of virtual panel discussions focused on current themes in educational leadership as related to policy, organization, preparation, and practice. And we invite you to join the conversation. Unfortunately, our YouTube link is not working right now. Or I'm sorry, the comments box is not working right now. So if you would like to leave comments for us, you can do so on Twitter. And I will show that to you right now. So our hashtag, if you guys can see this, is going to be Division A Connect, hashtag Division A Connect, and you will be able to ask questions to our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the music here. We'll give Dr. Williams another, oh, here, I think he is. Dr. Williams, are you there?
Hi, this is Daryl. Can you hear me?
Hi. It's good to hear. There you are. We see you now. Hi, Dr. Williams. I'm Carrie Gettner. I am one of the graduate student committee members for the American Education Research Association Division A, which is our leadership division, graduate student committee. And now that we have everyone here, we can go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists and tell a little bit about our evening tonight. So our first panelist is Superintendent Jeff Akins. He began his career as an elementary teacher in Columbus, Ohio, and he has been with Hillsborough County for over 25 years now. He was a teacher and administrator in Title I elementary schools before becoming the director of Title I and later federal programs. Recently, he was promoted to the deputy superintendent, and then just less than a year ago, I think now, he was promoted to superintendent of Hillsborough County. And we also have with us Dr. Daryl Williams. He's the chief officer for the Office of School Leadership with Houston Independent School District. He was also a regional superintendent for Achievement First, and before that, a principal for 6 years at an all-boys charter school. Is that correct, Dr. Williams?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And we had a few guiding questions for you that we sent out before we met here today. The first one, our big theme that we're talking about tonight is reframing culture in large districts. So we know that in large schools as well as in large districts, sometimes it's difficult to keep positive culture up, to keep that just the rapport and the excitement of teaching and working in a large school district. So we'd like for each of you to talk about the current climate in your district and your plans to either enhance or sustain that climate over time. And we can start with Dr. Williams for this question.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to come and support the conversation. I think the current state of culture in the district is, I think it's mixed. I think for several of our, campuses who are, what I would call high SES campuses, I think the, most stakeholders would, articulate that the culture is a positive one. I think on some of our campuses where, we have, high numbers of scholars and families who, have low, socioeconomic status, scholars that need, require special education services. I think those campuses, find it a little harder to, achieve the kind of culture that I think we want for all of our scholars. But, I think the current state is that, I think most stakeholders would say that they're pretty satisfied with the experience. But I think we have an opportunity to really create, school environments that are, both joyful and then also rigorous and demand a ton of scholars and the adults that lead those programs. But we're definitely not there yet. And in terms of, some of the things that we're, undertaking to, support that work is, for the first time since I've been here, we're actually training our leaders on how to establish the actual cultures that they want, and it's really several sessions that are designed to have leaders really think through who they are as a school, like what's their school's identity, what is it that they actually value, and what are the things that they're willing to hold people accountable for in executing on, so that they can provide their scholars an exceptional experience. One of the fundamental questions that we ask our leaders all the time is, and we're a decentralized district, so, and we're actually an open enrollment district, so families can actually choose, just from a myriad of schools in and outside of their zone. But one of the questions we always ask our leaders is why do you exist? If a parent chooses to send their child to your school, what's going to be different about the academic programming? What's going to be different around the habits of success that your scholars are going to get? And it's really the first time that we've undertaken in a really deliberate way teaching leaders how to do that.
Great, thank you so much for that answer. Again, if you guys have questions for either of our panelists, the hashtag on Twitter is #DivisionAConnect, and we will now hear from Superintendent Akins. And it looks like you're muted. Let me unmute you really quickly. Okay, we should be able to hear you now. So the current climate in Hillsborough County and plans to enhance or sustain that climate over time.
Certainly, Carrie, I think right now you could describe our culture as in transition. I think one of the things that, and I'll kind of build on what Dr. Williams had talked about there in Houston, is one of the first things we have to establish across a large organization is everyone has to know, every employee, no matter if they're instructional or non-instructional, we all have to know why we exist in our roles. And that we only exist in our roles because, as Daryl just said, parents make a choice. And when they make that choice, we have to honor that choice. And we have to honor that choice by providing their children with a safe, caring environment, one that is high-quality education, one that has high expectations for them, and certainly one that the child feels is nurturing in that environment. And so some of the things that we've been doing here in Hillsborough County is establishing a common language around what great culture looks like across the entire organization. We've depicted that visually, but we've also depicted it by identifying 8 key levers that we feel like, no matter if it's a classroom level or a school level or our entire organization, that we're going to have a strong focus around, no matter where our students attend school at. And so those levers include having clear, on every campus, in every classroom, having clear procedures and routines, having great classroom management plans that supports students' needs, ensuring that we model great character in front of students every single day. It doesn't matter if you're a classroom teacher or a principal. It could be the bus driver. It could be the student nutrition manager. Everyone has the opportunity to model great character in front of kids. Kids watch every move we make, and they listen to everything we say. So we have to make sure that everything that we say and do models that great character. We have to ensure that our students have great service learning opportunities. We have to not only change the minds of and teach our kids, but we have to change their hearts too. That's part of having a great culture across the entire organization, is having employees and having students that really engage in providing service to others. We want to make sure that our kids have leadership opportunities, have great voice in their education, because that's part of, they have to own their education ultimately. And so to do that, we have to give them leadership opportunities to have a voice in their learning. Another key lever is we have to help students know how to overcome come conflict in their life, and they're gonna face challenges. They're gonna face that. But how do we, as educators in each one of our schools and each one of our classrooms, help kids get past those tough challenges that they face every day? And then finally, we've been having a strong focus around mentoring. Every student in our district is going to have an advocate. It could be someone internally, externally, a volunteer. It could be their teacher, it could be their principal, it could be their custodian. Someone's going to come along beside each child and really advocate for them. All this culture won't happen unless we have clarity around what it looks like. So that's what we try to establish in our district, a real clarity around what great culture looks like. And also it really starts with building great relationships with our students, ensuring that our students see every adult that interacts with them every single day as someone who cares about them and has their best interest in mind. So that's kind of where we're at right now, making those transitions, and we've seen great impacts already in our district as we've put these things in place. Just things around just student choices and overcoming challenges with discipline issues, and having more hours of instructional time now for kids because they're making better choices in their classroom. So we believe that clarity around a common language around what great culture looks like, feels like, that's what's made a big impact in our district.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Coming back a little bit to what Dr. Williams said, he mentioned specific leadership training for school administrators. Superintendent Akins, could you speak a little bit to that? Some of the leadership styles that you advocate for in Hillsborough County, and why you guys are moving in that direction, and then Dr. Williams will have you answer that same question as well.
Sure will, Carrie. Definitely in Hillsborough County, we have a strong emphasis. We have our principal pipeline initiative that has really been working a lot on how all of our leaders in our district, and when they become the principal, that key CEO in the building, how they know how to foster great culture across the entire school. And so that's been woven into our principal pipeline training over the last several years for our key leaders in our district. But when we went to implement our school culture model this year, our organizational culture, we brought in all of our principals, our assistant principals, key leaders within the schools, and really gave them a full summer of training around, and gave them the opportunity to customize their implementation based off of the needs, specialized needs of their children in their schools. So not only have we been preparing them over the last several years in key areas of servant leadership, areas around building a strong school culture, but then we gave them the opportunity to build that as a team that really then went to the staffs at each one of those schools and has really gotten the ownership where it belongs. And that's what we have to, developing great culture is not a top-down type of a way to implement anything. You have to own great culture at every single one of your buildings, and that means you do have to have a clarity around what it looks like, but it's really the staff, the students, the community at those schools really buying into what that looks like and owning it. That's what's going to create the success at each one of our schools, and we're definitely seeing that.
Great, thank you. Dr. Williams, and I'll go ahead and let our YouTube guest give a reminder here that it's #DivisionAConnect on Twitter to ask questions for our panelists. We have a couple coming in right now, but I'll let Dr. Williams answer that previous question about the leadership styles that you advocate for in Houston, and why those styles, and how you're getting that to your leaders in the district.
Yeah, so as a part of the training sequence, we spend a considerable amount of time just having leaders articulate why they exist, what do they value, and then we spend a ton of time with leaders getting them to articulate what are going to be the adult habits necessary to create the culture and conditions that they want. I think a lot of times when we talk about culture, particularly school culture, we talk a lot about what we want scholars to be doing differently. And we've made a concerted effort to really push our principals to name the adult habits and behaviors that are going to be necessary to really create the an exceptional experience for for our scholars. Just for an example, when we talk about adult culture in the school building, like when we ask principals, we say, how do you actually want your your staff members to interact with each other when they're dealing with challenges. And once they can name and articulate what that vision is, then we actually say to them, all right, so when that's going really well, what does it look like? And if it's going really well, what did you actually do to get them there? And then we basically, put them in, what we call our, practice-based skill labs, where they actually get to, practice what it looks like when, you see two teachers who are actually engaging in a way that really promotes the kind of culture you want to create among adults. Like, how do you actually sustain and support that behavior? And we call that, having a mission-minded conversation. And in the same vein, when you see adults engaging in behavior that actually compromises or contradicts the culture you're trying to create, like, how do you have those mission-minded conversations so that they engage in the behaviors that you want? So so again, for us, we would love for all of our leaders to be what we call servant leaders. Some of them have that style, some of them don't. But for us, getting them to articulate the world that they want to create on the campus and then teaching them how to get it has been a real, kind of focus for us this school year.
Thank you very much. We have a question from one of our viewers on YouTube, and she asks, and I think this is directed for both of our leaders here tonight. With the culture of choice in the district, so Hillsborough has some choice options for their students, and Dr. Williams, you said that Houston was a district of choice. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
How do you promote that culture of choice without hurting the poorer, lower SES schools?
I think for us, we really pride ourselves and push ourselves on creating, multiple schools and all schools that are worthy of, Houston's children. We actually just initiated a program where all of our schools are going to be open to, families and neighboring communities, so that they can come in and see the wonderful work that's happening. But for us, we understand that, families should not have the luck of the draw. They actually should have, many options of, quality schools. And for some of our schools, and, I have to be totally honest with you, some of our schools need to, get better at the, services and the quality of education that they're providing. And I think families wouldn't choose other options. I think a large majority of our schools, keep scholars in their communities and are providing their scholars a really sound educational experience. But we do have some schools that parents probably shouldn't choose them as their first choice, and those are schools that we're working really hard with to ensure that they're providing the highest quality education, and they're learning how to do that much better.
Okay, thank you. And Superintendent Akins?
Sure, definitely in Hillsborough County, we're huge on our choice options for our students. We have over 50,000 students that are attending schools that are not in their zone school out of our 200,000 children. So that's over 25% of our students are able to have multiple choices that their parents engage in annually to attend a school of their choice. We have hardship choice options. We have administrative placement options, and then we have our regular magnet school choice options and our traditional choice options. So that provides a lot of ability for parents to feel positive about the choice that they've made with regard to their son or daughter's education. That's why I said earlier on, that's what really instigates why we exist in our district. So we have to ensure that every single one of our schools, whether it's in an area of Hillsborough County where there's more poverty, we have to provide an outstanding level of support services. We're not decentralized here in Hillsborough, although we do provide a lot of autonomy with our leaders at our schools. We do feel like centrally we have that ability to direct services right to where schools need it the most, and that allows, I believe, our families and our students to be able to to have their needs met. So we utilize our funds very strategically in many of those places that we feel like the extra services should be needed. And so we have lots of parents that value their neighborhood schools and feel like that's the very best option for their child, and they know that they feel more involved and more connected in those neighborhood schools. But we also feel like we have all kinds of options out there based off students' interest, things that parents feel like might be a better situation for their child, and we want to make sure that those families get those types of choices in our district.
Great. A follow-up question here from one of our viewers. Both of you talk a lot about the parents and community engagement, or just responding to the needs. You know, the why do we exist, and we're here to support the students and their parents, and they have the choice. So how are the communities serving the schools, and how are the schools serving the communities, and what does that do to the culture? Superintendent Eakins, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, that's a vital part of the success of any school is that the parents have to feel like the school is reaching out to them, and also the school has to feel like that they provided opportunities for the families and the community to be engaged. We also have to understand, in many of our families, they're working families, and it's very difficult. We have to kind of define very carefully, very clearly, you know, what does involvement mean? What does engagement mean? Certainly we have the ability for all of our parents to keep up on the education of their child, but sometimes that may look different. We have to know that not every parent is going to be able to come once a week to the campus to become involved in some sort of activity. That may not be possible because of their situation and their work situation. So we have to see and let them know how much we appreciate how they're sending to school. A student is prepared with their homework done, ready to learn, and value that part of what they're doing at home to provide that support to their child that's needed to have that student be successful. So we have to build and continue to always foster that relationship by recognizing in our parents and in our what they're doing to support the school, and then make sure that when parents are when we do have opportunities for parents to engage with their child's education on our campuses, that we do so in a manner that is not intimidating. It's a manner where they feel it's a comfortable environment for them to be there. They see adults interacting with their kids, and I always see it as an opportunity for us to show in front of the parents how much we care about their children, and make that an opportunity to really showcase that relationship. When parents see the relationship that teachers and leaders have with their children, that's going to break down a lot of barriers right there. That's going to break down any walls of intimidation or any skepticism about how that school is supporting their child, and they're going to be more open and becoming more active in that school. I've seen it happen in school after school where once they see how the school personnel are bonded with their children, that just opens up the floodgates for parents in the community to become more involved.
Yeah, very well said, Superintendent Aiken. And I think the only two things that I'll add is there's a difference between, you know, engaging families and then empowering them. I mean, what we've been really focused on is, you know, really putting families in a position where they understand that they actually know their children better than we do, and we have a ton to learn from them, and they have a ton to bring to the table. And I think that really addresses what Superintendent Aiken was describing in creating environments that are welcoming and inviting to our families. The reality is there's a wealth of information that we could be, you know, gathering from our families to help us be more effective at the work we do with their children. And then the other piece for me is you know, really putting you know, families in a position where they can truly, you know, and really you know, soundly like scrutinize the experience that their children are getting. I mean, sometimes we don't put families in a position where, you know, they can comfortably question some of the things that are happening, and question in a way that really allows us as a school and as a district to get better at what we do. And you know, I think, you know, in terms of empowering families, but then also really, you know, getting them to see that they're a valuable, you know, contributor to the work that we do, I think is really important for us to continue to pull them closer to us.
Thank you both for that. I appreciate that. Another question from one of our YouTube viewers. They wanted to know about the impact of culture at the district level and the school level on school improvement. So if you could speak to that as far as evidence that you've seen just in your tenure in your different districts, as well as just what you're hoping to see. Dr. Williams, we can start with you this time.
So I'm gonna take my best attempt at answering that question. I mean, I think at the district level, we have to create a culture that, you know, we're all still learning and growing, and really, you know, in a place where you know, we're really just trying to figure out, like, what's the best way to support, you know, all of our schools. So, you know, I think for me at the district level, you know, understanding that we're all, you know, a group of learners that are, you know, really trying to do what's in the best interests of, you know, our leaders, our families, and our scholars is really important. I think also, you know, kind of my role in my position, I manage and support you know, a bunch of folks who interact directly with schools. You know, I need to really be positioning them in a place where they feel like they're growing and developing and really getting better at, you know, supporting, you know, habits of excellence on the campuses that they serve. But I think, you know, the culture in the district, you know, district office, you know, really needs to be one of, like, we exist to serve schools. And I think we're at a place in Houston where, you know, many of us are, you know, at that place where we understand that we only exist to, you know, provide schools exceptional service. I think we have, you know, places where we can, you know, kind of grow and develop and get better there. But that has to be true of, you know, of our culture if we want to really impact what's happening, you know, at schools. You know, I think, you know, at the school level, you know, when school leaders can create a culture, you know, what we call joyful rigor, you know, I think you see, you know, happy scholars. I think you see happy parents. You see happy, you know, teachers. And I think in order to create those, kind of utopias of joyful rigor, it really requires your principals and leadership team members to be skilled instructional leaders, because we believe teachers are the #1 variable in ensuring that, you know, scholars get an exceptional experience. So in terms of you know, school-based culture, like, we want our principals and leadership teams to be creating a culture that's, you know, one of instructional excellence, but then also, you know, create the conditions that, you know, Superintendent Aiken talked about, where, you know, scholars feel loved, appreciated, they feel like they belong, you know, they feel like they can actually engage in, you know, experiences that are aligned with their interests. But I think it takes all of those things to really, you know, have culture impact outcomes on campuses.
Thank you. Superintendent Aikens?
Sure, I'll take it from there. I definitely feel the role of at the district level is really more of a structural level, to create the right structure to be able to support and serve the needs of the variety of schools that we have across our community. So the first thing that we have to do is at the district level is understand that we have to, at the end of the day, the improvement on schools and the improvement for student achievement, the ownership has to be as close to the child as possible. There has to be an ownership at the school level. What strategies do we know, because we know our kids the best, do we need to implement to support our students behaviorally, instructionally, to ensure their success? So we have to set up a structure at the district level to ensure that every school has the resources, has the tools, has the support systems in place, to not go in and feel like a school now is something is being done to them, but being done alongside with them to support the needs of our schools, our teachers, and ultimately our students. So creating that right structure and that right balance, so that at the district level we're doing all the right things to make sure that our schools feel that support and not feel like something is being done to them from people that don't know their kids as well as what they do. What we have to do is we have to monitor what that looks like across all of our 250 plus schools here in Hillsborough. We have to make sure, yes, we have the right leaders in place that are going to direct and have that right culture of learning in every single school, have high expectations. Certainly we have positions in place that monitor our principals and their work around that and provide that support. We know we have divisions such as our curriculum and instruction division that has to provide great support for the instructional programs that our schools are implementing. So that means we have to have clear understanding at the district level of what that looks like at every single school. We have key positions that go into our schools from our area offices that provide great support in the instructional programs for those classrooms and teachers who need it the most. Certainly, we have embedded resources on those sites around the key instructional areas that in which kids need the help the most. So it's about aligning and bringing clarity to that structure, so that there's not a confusion around the support, but there's a clarity around how schools feel that they are being supported in creating great environments and great cultures to ensure students are going to be achieving at their highest level. That's what we have to be very cognizant of at the district level, is not to do that work for schools, but to know how to create the structure to support it.
Right, and it sounds like what I'm hearing from both of you is that at the district level, that leadership looks like support to the schools in the ways that they need it. So specifically for Dr. Williams on this one, we have a question about joyful rigor. Can you talk to us about joyful rigor?
Yeah, so
we might take this, coin this term from you.
Yeah, so I mean, for us, joyful rigor is really that sweet spot of, where we can actually push scholars to do the intellectual heavy lifting and they actually enjoy it. Really creating conditions where it's okay to make mistakes, where mistakes are really some of the best learning opportunities for us, and we actually like embrace it and enjoy it, because we know that it actually helps us grow up and get better. So when you walk into a classroom and a scholar makes a mistake, and then the teacher quite skillfully pulls the class together and says, "Scholars, here's an opportunity for us to actually correct this this misunderstanding or misconception we have," and the scholars actually understand that that's a part of learning and they enjoy it. Like for us, that's a classroom that's really moving towards what we call really creating this condition we call joyful rigor.
Great. Superintendent Akins, do you see that happening in Hillsborough County?
Well, I would love to have joyful rigor in all of our classrooms. That's for sure. That is, like as Daryl said, that is kind of creating the sweet spot for what great learning looks like and great instruction looks like and great culture looks like. You're trying to create a fun environment. You're trying to and create a safe environment, an environment where people can take risks and feel like that's okay, because some of the greatest people in our country, they've only become great because they failed several times getting there, and so we have to realize that that's part of the learning process, and I feel like that has to be part of the overall culture in an entire organization. You have to ensure that people are okay with the fact that they're gonna it's okay to take those leaps of faith, so to speak, and those risks, and know if you don't quite hit it, guess what, you're gonna end up making progress toward where you want to be. So I love that term, and if you don't mind us stealing it in Hillsborough, we'll take it here too.
And speaking of taking risks, both of you are relatively new in your positions, and undoubtedly you have experienced some barriers in promoting district-wide and positive school culture. Can you speak to some of those barriers and how you have tried to move past them, and what you're still working on in those areas?
Sure, I'll be glad to. I take that. I'll take that. Sure. I mean, I think definitely, when you talk about developing great school culture and you just use that terminology, 27,000 employees may have a different idea what that looks like. So I think that's part of the challenge of large organizations, is really bringing clarity around what great culture looks like, feels like across the organization. So you have to tell lots of stories, give lots of examples. You have to make sure every time you're in front of any employee group, any school, you're talking a similar language. And so part of the biggest challenge, I guess, that I've I've probably experienced in my role here for 5 months is just everyone believing in what that looks like and what that feels like, and having that strong belief that every student deserves that quality culture to exist for their learning, and I think everyone wants that. But remember, this is what's unique about our profession. Everyone that is engaged in our profession has also had their own very unique experience in education, in learning, in their upbringing, and so everyone brings a little different idea about what that might look like, what that might feel like, as far as bringing having great school or organizational culture. And so it's trying to build a framework around what that looks like, not a prescription, but a framework around what that looks like for all of our students to be successful and all of our staff to be successful. And so I would say one of my barriers has been just bringing clarity across the organization. I think also another issue has been around that belief, that going from that fixed mindset to that growth mindset. We've been talking a lot about that with our leaders in our district, because we can think of all kinds of reasons why something can't happen, but we have to focus on why we know it can happen and what we're going to do, what we're going to put in place to support our students and our employees to make sure that we do have great cultures where joyful rigor occurs in every classroom.
Yeah, I think my biggest challenge has been, getting people to, like Superintendent Aiken said, believe that, all scholars actually can achieve at high levels. I think, one of the other challenges is getting people to be comfortable with engaging in practice as they're building skill. One of the reasons that, Dr. Gray asked me to come to Houston is he's actually heard about, the way in which I do adult learning. And, when I got there, it was really one of the first times that adults have been asked to actually practice what they're learning in authentic ways during training. And it's practice for adults is uncomfortable. And, I can't tell you how many adults get up and got to use the bathroom and got to make phone calls when it's time to engage in practice. And I think that that's one of the barriers that, I'm really delighted to say that I feel like we're overcoming now. I think adults are, and I'm talking about principals, I'm talking about school support officers, I'm talking about chief school officers, all individuals who, obviously, come with a wealth of knowledge and experience, but really, needing to come to terms with the fact that we all are growing and learning, and part of that journey is being able to practice and get feedback on our work. So in addition to what Superintendent Aiken said, that's what I would kind of add to some of the challenges that I've had.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the hashtag for those of you who are listening on or watching on YouTube. If you join us in our conversation on Twitter at #DivisionAConnect, you can ask questions there, and we have one specifically for Superintendent Aikens right now. Someone asked, what do the levers student leadership and mentoring look like, and how will you offer these opportunities to students?
That's a great question, because a lot of it with mentoring and student leadership across the pre-K to 12 environment may look very, very different. We certainly, in leadership, it could range anywhere from just giving students more voice with regards to their learning. That's allowing students to feel like they have that ownership in their learning, and that's building leadership within them, but also then providing opportunities for our students, knowing that every student is uniquely gifted. We have to understand every student has that ability. It may not be an ability to speak like what typical leaders might envision, but they have a skill set that they can bring to the table to show leadership in maybe it's an artistic manner, maybe it's quiet behind the scenes, doing something within their own classrooms, within their own schools, that's showing that they are exhibiting quality leadership skills. So we have to give better definition to what that looks like, pre-K all the way to 12. And I was an elementary school principal, so I know it's possible even down to the first and second and third grade levels in our schools for kids to get what that looks like and exhibit their leadership skills. I also think that in mentoring, we want it to be quality mentoring. We want it to be mentoring that just isn't coming alongside and having a conversation with students, but we give clear mentoring training through some of our serve training in our district. We've been doing Check and Connect, which is a much more structured type of mentoring program in many of our schools. We want there to be a clear definition around what quality mentoring looks like, feels like to the student. So it's not just a relationship built with them, but it's one built off of what that student's needs are, and how that adult can really come alongside them and help them achieve their goals. Set that high expectation, that bar every time they meet. Make sure that they are encouraging and being supportive of them, but we have to make sure that there's some sort of structure to that mentoring. It just can't be a haphazard type of mentoring. It's got to be something that when the student leaves and the adult leaves, they know they've had a quality interaction that's setting the student up for success between then and the next time they meet.
Great, thank you. It looks like we might have lost Dr. Williams. His video feed cut out, and then he was completely gone from our screen. So Superintendent Akins, if you don't mind, we'll just continue talking with you a little bit. We had a question about the culture that's being built with school resource officers and site administration. So as we're trying to increase this positive school culture, how is that looking with our resource officers? And maybe you can speak to that from the elementary through the high school level, since there are resource officers at each of those sites.
Sure. I mean, they play a vital role in the overall safety of our campuses, but they're there to develop relationships with students just like anybody else, to ensure that students feel safe within their environment. And then part of doing that is students and families have to see how the school resource officer is connected into the community right there within the school. It's not someone that is there as a disciplinarian. One of the things we've been very clear about in our district is the separation between administration and our school resource officers. They get engaged around law enforcement issues, and many of those issues are not even happening on our campus, but are happening perhaps in their neighborhoods. They have to ensure that they're knowing what's going on around the community. But within the school environment, they do provide a protective layer, but they do provide that additional person on our campus that we feel like is a great relationship builder with kids. They do part of the mentoring programs at our schools. They become part of that culture. That's got to be part of how our students see law enforcement in our schools. And like I said, they do offer a tremendous service of protecting our students and our employees, if anything were to arise. But we have to clearly delineate the lines of and draw the lines where they get involved. If there's an issue in a classroom of a student misbehaving, there should not be the school resource officer going down to the classroom. That's an administrative issue, so you have to draw the line very clear. And if there is something that is happening that we do need to bring in law enforcement, it has to be clearly articulated what their role is when they engage in that particular incident. We don't want any unnecessary arrests on our campus. We want to make sure that things are, first of all, handled by the people who know them the best. That's why it's important for our resource officers to build relationships with students, so that when they do come to a situation, they can de-escalate the situation just like an administrator or a teacher, and then prevent any further issues from occurring with that particular student.
Thank you. I think that definitely answers the question. Absolutely. We're almost out of time. It looks like we have another one final question about assessing school culture. So is there a process for that yet, or is that something that's being developed right now? And can you just speak to that a little bit?
Well, certainly in Hillsborough, we do several different kinds of surveys that will definitely get at some of that. We do our parent surveys, our student surveys, our employee satisfaction surveys. We do our what we call our telesurveys that provides a lot of input to our school administrators around the issues, and some of those questions speak directly to school culture. We're definitely looking at key indicators around learning, around behavior, suspensions. All those things are also indicators that we're looking at, because we know that that a school that has great culture is going to also be much more proactive in how they provide support to students. And so there's going to be a lot better choices being made by students who feel better connected and have a stronger relationship with the people on that campus. And we're seeing in our district, lots of data that's indicating our behavior incidents and our overall suspension rates are going down significantly. And I believe a lot of it can be attributed to the type of culture that is being created at each one of those schools to ensure that the strong relationship is built. So students just don't make poor choices. They don't want to make poor choices because they know if they do, it disappoints those adults that have worked so hard to develop those relationships with them. And that's really the ultimate level that you want to get to at any culture in your organization, is when your kids don't want to make those type of choices. They feel like, I only want to make the choices that are going to please the people that obviously have shown that they care about me and they care about my education, they care about me as a person. That's where we ultimately want to get to in our district and in every classroom in our district. When we get to that place, we know that we will have reached a pinnacle of school culture.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, good to have you back. We were just talking about assessing school culture, and what tools do you have available to do that, or what tools are being developed if you don't have some already?
Yeah, so as a part of our training, we help principals and their leadership teams build what we call school culture rubrics. So, we allow them an opportunity to kind of name and really, craft, like, what are the, key adult and scholar habits that they, they want to hold people accountable for executing on. And then we use the school culture rubric really as a tool to, support the leadership teams and skill building. But then also when we go to campuses and support them, we use the rubric as a way for them to do a quick self-assessment of where they think they are. And then our goal really is to, help either confirm or kind of deny where they think they are, and then help them think through, if they're approaching proficiency on, key habits of rituals and traditions, for instance, on their campus. We're their thought partners in helping them think through the best way to improve that, that particular metric. But the school culture rubric is really one of the ways that, we really support schools in really, assessing and measuring if they're creating the culture and identity that they want for their campuses.
So the rubric that you would go in and use with the schools is actually one that they've created themselves?
Yep. So we would do it. I mean, that's all a part of one of our training sequences. It's right. So it's like, once you kind of establish your mission, what you value, how you want the adults and scholars to, what are the key habits that adults and scholars are going to need to, successfully meet the demands of the campus. We then, help principals then create, an actual rubric, right? So for instance, if schools want to, have an expectation that, scholars and teachers, or scholars and adults on the campus, are going to, interact cordially, throughout the day, there are multiple ways in which that could happen. That could happen during morning arrival, where, scholars are greeted, by adults, hands are shaken. Adults are asking scholars how their morning is. Scholars do the same, in return. And we actually can measure if that's actually happening on a campus, And for us, adult scholar interactions are one of the key ways in which we develop positive relationships with scholars. So we strongly encourage, our principals and leaders to put a metric in their rubrics around how they expect scholars and adults to interact, especially when things are going well. Because sometimes what happens is adults, increase their kind of verbal exchanges with scholars when things aren't going well, and we actually want to have the opposite happen. We actually want adults and scholars to be engaged in thoughtful conversations, not only when things are going wrong, but actually we would want the ratio to be those conversations are happening, much more often and are kind of positively, motivated, rather than we only have these long conversations when we're trying to figure out why you made a particular poor choice. Does that answer your question about the rubric?
Absolutely. Thank you. So thinking about improving school culture, and you're talking about rubrics and things like that, I'm wondering, and there was also a question from one of our viewers about teacher evaluation. So is that culture part of the piece that the teachers are evaluated on? And if so, how are you going to keep up the positive school culture in this era of accountability and testing and teacher evaluations, that sort of thing? So we can hear from Superintendent Akins first on this. I know that Hillsborough's had some turnaround, some conversation lately on the evaluation system in the district. So I'll let you speak to that first, and then we'll return to Dr. Williams.
Sure, absolutely. Well, certainly, as far as teachers having great culture within their classroom, that obviously is all part of creating the right environment, which is definitely captured on our evaluation, our evaluation tool. We're looking more in our district. Now we've had a process in place for a number of years now, in which teachers have been part of evaluating other teachers within our district, and looking at a lot of the research on best practices. Although we've had great staff doing that work and providing great feedback to our teachers in that area, we're looking at how we can make modifications and transition to be less evaluative and more in that support role, colleague to colleague, really to create the environment in which teachers are interacting and having more authentic interactions and providing more authentic feedback, and not necessarily concerned about the fact that feedback is going to have an impact on their overall evaluation. So we're having some conversations around that now in our district to see how we can maybe make modifications around that, so that teachers are still having great conversations with teachers to help their practice, help them improve, but do it in a much more non-evaluative way. And it's what I believe and what a lot of the research is speaking to. That's the right kind of way to move, and so we're having those conversations right now. And the accountability system has definitely put on the pressures into this classroom and into the schools. I think evaluation is one thing, but accountability has also added another layer of pressures, and that we have to own that as an educational body. We have to know that we have to be accountable to what how we educate our students and how we create the right environment to help them achieve their success. We do want that accountability system to be fair. I think it has to be a fair system of accountability, and it has to have a level playing field. I mean, we have to know that teachers that are working with students who may not come into their classrooms on level still get the same opportunities in an accountability system to show progress, and that's something that we should advocate for as educators, is that because we want our best teachers working with our kids who need them the most, and so we have to create an environment and a culture within our profession that teachers want to make that move into those very rigorous and sometimes more challenging classrooms and schools where they feel like they can make the biggest impact. And I don't want an accountability system to send them somewhere else where they don't feel like they're going to quite achieve that level of success there. That's the wrong message to send our educators, and so we have to have an accountability system that holds us accountable for the progress and the achievement of our kids, but doesn't send our teachers who those kids need the most somewhere else.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, and then the only other thing that I would add to that is us in Houston, I mean, we're definitely making a similar kind of shift. We've actually made some modifications to our teacher appraisal and development system that really, pushes our appraisers to, be growth minded and really focus their, feedback on growing and developing, teachers. So for the first time, we actually have created a feedback and development tool that actually tracks the quality and quantity of feedback that appraisers are giving teachers. And lo and behold, one of the indicators that's gotten a lot of attention is classroom management, creating an environment conducive to learning. And what we actually found is there's a ton of room for our appraisers to grow in the actual quality of the feedback that they're giving teachers in that particular area. And I think we're at a pretty exciting time in that I think we're starting to own the fact that we got to just do a really a better job at coaching and growing our appraisers so that they're actually giving quality feedback to our teachers so that they can grow and develop. And one of the other things that we've modified in the informal walkthrough tool that we use for coaching and feedback is we don't assign ratings to teachers when those happen. So, teachers can really view that experience as, one that's truly designed to help them grow and develop and get incrementally better at what we're asking them to do. But there's a ton of work to be done in helping our appraisers and even our district leaders really teach folks how to create the culture that they want for their campuses. And it's going to be hard work, but we're excited about really pushing our district there.
Great. Thank you both. I want to open it up now to just some closing remarks from both of you. I feel like we've had a lot of good conversation tonight and some great questions from our YouTube viewers. We talked about what the current climate in each school district was like, and that Superintendent Akins talked about it being a transition time, and Dr. Williams talked about this very mixed culture where most people would say that it's happy and joyful, but definitely in those lower SES schools that there's some mixed feelings about culture there. We talked about leadership styles and servant leadership, that it has to come from the school and it can't be top-down authoritative as to the styles that the teachers are going to use the site leaders will use in building that school culture. We talked about some difficult barriers that both of you have experienced in your short time in your current roles. And we appreciate you guys opening up about that. A lot about school choice. We learned tonight that over 25% of Hillsborough students are at schools by choice, and from Dr. Williams we heard that Houston is a choice district. So there's a lot of focusing on the family and how we are there as educators to serve them. And there was talk about how the district office is there to serve the schools. So I want to go ahead and give you guys, and we can't forget about joyful rigor, right? We learned a new term that everybody will be implementing soon. So we talked about that. It's that enjoying the intellectual heavy lifting, and that learning comes from those mistakes. And both of our panelists talked about that tonight. So I want to open it up. Dr. Williams, we'll start with you. Just some closing remarks, words of wisdom for the new practitioners that are watching, and for our graduate students that are hoping to get into leadership soon. What would you like to tell us?
I think Superintendent Akins spoke a little bit about this earlier, but when families come to a school and they choose a district, I mean, we inherently are making a promise that those families are going to get an exceptional experience. And there's no governing, law that says we have to think and behave that way, but we should. I mean, we should understand that anytime a scholar walks through our doors, we've inherently made a promise to families. And I would encourage any new, practitioners to, when you're when you're in a role where you can either impact or inform or shape the experience that scholars are getting in a school setting. Most scholars get one opportunity at a great education, and we have to make sure that we create the conditions that allow that to happen. One of the ways that we do that is being very deliberate and thoughtful around the culture and climate that we want to create for them. And in many cases, we have to be relentless in holding the adults and all stakeholders accountable for, creating the conditions and really behaving in a way that allow us to create, exceptional learning environments for children. So,
thank you, Superintendent Akins.
Well, Carrie, first of all, I want to thank you for having Dr. Williams and I on tonight, and to just share. I mean, that's part of our roles as leaders is to share with other leaders, and so it's been a privilege just to come and speak to those who are listening out there. And you know, my final words would be, first of all, the key to everything that we've talked about today tonight really is great leadership, and ensuring that everyone that moves into those roles as being a leader of a school or a district or wherever you're a leader at, just the amazing opportunity and privilege you have to do that. And when you move into those roles, it's absolutely an honor to be able to shape that culture and create that climate in which every single one of our students and our stakeholders are going to be successful. I think the key to anything that is to know your students. I mean, that when you walk into a building and you see great things happening with kids, it's because the adults on that campus know the kids. They truly know them. They understand their strengths, their challenges. They have positive relationships with them. That's the fundamental foundation. That's the foundation of what everything else is built on. Just the basics of knowing your kids. And now we will provide and we will give all the tools and resources and training to ensure that every single one of our adults are equipped with what's needed to help every single one of those students be successful. So when you're the leader in an environment where you see students thrive and you see the employees thrive, because it is really all about serving kids, you know you've kind of reached that point in leadership where you know you're in your sweet spot. And so that's what I desire for everyone out there that's moving into that role, that you eventually get to that point where you see the impact. And it's not that you've been directive. It's because you've built a framework and you've been more of a shepherd around how you get people to want to buy, to really own being a great leader, being a great teacher, being a great student. That's where you ultimately want to get everyone to be. So I just encourage anyone that's out there tonight that as you're moving into these roles, just know what a wonderful privilege it is and honor it is to be a leader at any one of our schools across this nation.
Thank you very much. And from the Graduate Student Committee for Division A of AERA, we thank you both so very much. We know that this was an hour that could have been spent doing many other things, but you chose to be with us tonight, and we truly appreciate it. I want to give a quick thanks to our unseen committee members right now. Priya Lalonde is working the camera, so to speak, for us. She is at the University of Illinois, and Ramon Griffin has been watching our tweets and YouTube to relay those questions to us. He's at Michigan State University. I would like to let our viewers know. Let me pull this up. I'm so sorry. Oh, okay. Yep, it's on me. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Okay, Division A has two fantastic opportunities coming up for the AERA annual meeting. One is the Dialogic Forum, and the other is the Foster Polite Scholarship. To learn more, visit our Facebook page, Division A Graduate Students, or our Twitter feed, Division A GSC. Our next Connect series will be in January, and we'll look at leadership in transnational communities with students and immigrant first-generation and refugee students and families. So spread the word and join us in our next Connect series. Again, we thank Dr. Williams from Houston and Superintendent Akins from Hillsborough County for their time tonight. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.